Turkey Tetrazzini is a dusty, stale, old retro recipe. An Italian-American classic named after an Italian opera singer. But it is most definitely not an Italian recipe. Trash recipes will use like a can of cream of mushroom or some crap like that. But when done right, it's a creamy, cheesy, crunchy baked pasta that uses one of the 5 mother sauces veloute as the base, which will then be turning into a secondary mother sauce, sauce supreme, to make this dish. So it's gonna be a great time to cover those techniques. This recipe is gonna be available in my holiday plan of attack. It's gonna be linked down in the description. It's a digital download, not a book yet. I wanna thank our sponsor today, Made In, but more on them later. For now, let's just jump right into it. Now for turkey tetrazzini, we're gonna need some cooked leftover turkey, which is what makes this a great Thanksgiving leftover. So I've got some sliced turkey breast here, some dark meat, and I'm just going to shred them, right? I kind of just wanna pull them into shreds. When they warm up, they'll cook down, become tender, they'll hydrate. Kind of want to avoid like big, thick chunks of turkey. It's a little bit of skin. We can take that off, or you can leave that in and mix that in as well. So we got our turkey prepped. We'll set that off to the side. Pasta of choice today is going to be cavatappi. Now, turkey tetrazzini uses spaghetti. Now, although spaghetti is classic, baking spaghetti to me is just not the move. Cavatappi is gonna match all the ingredients in this dish a little bit better. It's gonna be hard to bake spaghetti nice and al dente. And when it's spaghetti, it just kind of ends up being this kind of sloppy mess. And with this dish, we're gonna try and upgrade this stale recipe, and one of the upgrades is changing the pasta to a tube pasta. In this case, cavatappi. To me, it just makes more sense. We're gonna set that off to the side. I've got about 3 cups of stock. This is turkey stock. If you've got chicken stock or a brodo, that works fine as well. I have about 3 cups of that, and that is the base of a veloute. A veloute is basically a stock that's thickened with a roux, like a bechamel, but with stock instead of cream. A veloute is a French mother sauce. And that mother sauce can be turned into lots of different things, one of which being sauce supreme, which is a veloute sauce that's finished with cream and mushroom, which we're going to be doing today. This is an upgrade because a lot of people these days use like a canned cream of mushroom or something that has those ingredients built in already. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take our cream that we're gonna add to the veloute to make the sauce supreme, and we're gonna infuse it with lots of delicious flavors like shallot, garlic, some bay leaf, some peppercorn, and all the holiday herbs, thyme, rosemary, and sage. So to start, we're just gonna take the garlic and the shallots and we're just gonna thin them very slight. We're just gonna slice them very thinly so we can infuse their flavor quickly into the cream. Now we really wanna go as thin as we can. We're not gonna infuse these flavors very long into the cream, so the thinner the slices, the faster we'll be able to infuse those flavors into the cream. And then some peppercorn, and this is gonna be the infusion for the cream. It's gonna add a ton of flavor. Set that off to the side. Here I got these beautiful chestnut mushrooms that my guy at the farmer's market gets. They're these amazing mushrooms that grow in these large kind of clusters. They have a really great flavor and they hold their texture even when they're cooked. And they just have this really beautiful look and shape that's gonna go well in this pasta. You can just cut like the root off and we've got about a ½ pound of mushrooms. Although you can use whatever mushrooms you find. And then we got our chestnut mushrooms prepped. Set those off to the side. And then we're gonna use about 4 cups of liquid in this recipe. So for the roux, I'm gonna prepare 4 tablespoons of flour and 4 tablespoons of unsalted butter. The ratio is about 1 tablespoon of butter to 1 tablespoon of flour to 1 cup of liquid for a roux. And then for the mushrooms, I need a little bit of sliced garlic. So I'm just gonna quickly slice up a clove or 2 and set those aside with the mushrooms. And again, for later in the recipe, I need a little bit of chopped parsley. So I'm gonna tear a handful of leaves and just chop those up as fine as I can. And then later in this recipe, we're gonna use some mascarpone cheese. That's gonna add a little bit of acidity, some brightness to the dish, and some creaminess along with some Parmigiano Reggiano cheese. So I'm gonna get a big pot of water up to a boil. I got this new made-in pasta pot here that I'm gonna be christening today. And we're gonna be cooking a pound of pasta, so you want a big pot. Next to that, I'm gonna get a small little pan to make our cream infusion. I'm gonna get a few tablespoons of olive oil at the bottom of the pan, and once that pan's hot, I'm gonna go ahead and add the onion and the garlic and add a little bit of salt directly to it. And I wanna saute that for about 3 to 4 minutes. Try and get those nice and opaque and translucent. Then I'm gonna take about a tablespoon of whole peppercorn. I'm gonna add that straight into the pan. And I'm just gonna cook this until we start to fry the onion and the garlic a little bit. Once you see those onions beginning to darken and fry a bit, then we can go ahead, we can add that bundle of herbs, a little bit of the thyme, the sage, the rosemary. And then completely optional, but to add a little bit of heat, I'm just gonna take like a teaspoon of that Calabrian chili paste that I like to use right into it, but that is optional. And then again, this is optional as well, but I have some sherry, so I'm gonna deglaze the pan with a little bit of that sherry. I'm just gonna kill the heat before I do though. If you've got wine, you can use that. If you've got nothing, that's fine too. Then I'm gonna go ahead, add the bay leaf. Then I'm gonna go with at least 1.5 cups of cream, and then just zest, like 1/4 of a lemon straight into it. I'm gonna get the heat back on. I wanna bring the cream up to a boil, then drop it down to a simmer, allow those herbs to infuse into the cream. And after about 5 minutes of cooking on low, just set it off to the side, get it off the heat, and let it just chill out on the back of the stove while we make our veloute. In a larger pan, on high heat, I'm gonna add a little bit of olive oil, and once hot, I'm gonna go in with the mushrooms. And I'm gonna cook the mushrooms for about 5 to 6 minutes. Just wanna sear them a little bit, get some color on the outside. Once I've got a little bit of color on the outside of those mushrooms and they've started to brown, I'm gonna go in with the 4 tablespoons of butter. I'm gonna begin to melt that. I'm also gonna add the garlic and start to fry that and infuse that butter. And what I really wanna do is kind of create a little bit more flavor by making a brown butter. So we're just gonna let that butter go. It's gonna start to foam up. And it's gonna turn from a light golden into a darker amber color. In the meantime, the water should be boiling. We just wanna get that water salted. This cavatappi cooks for 8 minutes. Since we're gonna bake it, I'm gonna cook it for 4 minutes, making sure I stir often. And we're just gonna keep an eye on the mushrooms while that butter makes a transformation into that light brown to that amber brown. So you just wanna keep those moving. And then once that brown butter is a nice amber color, then we're gonna add the 4 tablespoons of flour. What we're gonna do is create a blonde roux. We're gonna mix up that flour until it's fully absorbed by the butter. And then we wanna cook that for a minute or 2 just to cook out the rawness of the flour. And once it's cooked for about 2 minutes and the color is a light brown, then we can deglaze with a little bit of that sherry. And again, if you don't have that sherry, you can go straight in with the stock. And I want to add that stock slowly to begin with to make sure no lumps form. And then once we've got a smooth mixture, we can go ahead, add that rest of that stock, and we can bring that mixture up to a boil. And once it reaches that boil, then it's going to begin to thicken. By now, the pasta should be cooked. We can get that off the stove. We can drain it. And once it's drained, we can set that off to the side. It should be about halfway cooked. And right now our veloute is beginning to thicken. And it's at this point that we're gonna turn the veloute into sauce supreme by straining in that infused cream mixture directly into the veloute, squeezing out all that flavor from the onions, the garlic, and the herbs, and adding it to the sauce. Stirring it to combine it completely, and then allowing it to come back up to a boil to continue to thicken. Now we need that large pot we cooked the pasta in, so I'm gonna take a mug and I'm just gonna reserve at least 2 cups of the pasta water, and then drain the pasta water so we can finish the pasta in that large pot. And by now, the sauce supreme is nice and thick. We don't want it too thick. We want it to coat the back of the spoon, but we still want it a little loose because the pasta is still not done cooking. So if it's too thick now, pasta will absorb it all in the oven. So now return the pasta to the large pot, and then pour that sauce directly into the pasta and make sure you get every last drop. And stir up the pasta to get it coated in that sauce. We also want to add our pulled turkey. I'm going to add about 1/4 cup of mascarpone cheese, and I'm just going to stir that all together, melting the mascarpone cheese, coating the pasta in that sauce, and then using the pasta water to thin out the sauce as needed. Again, making sure we know we're compensating for the amount of time that this needs to cook in the oven. Then we're gonna go in with a handful or 2 of Parmigiano Reggiano. Work that in until it's nice and melty and creamy. That cheese is gonna thicken the sauce, so if you need more pasta water, add it as needed. Give it a taste, add any final seasoning. It needs a little bit of salt. And to me, this guy's ready to get baked. Now, if you entertain or host, having good bakeware during the holidays is a must for all your stuffings, your casseroles, anything you plan on baking in the oven. And today we'll be using these beautiful porcelain baking dishes provided to us by our fantastic sponsor today, Made In. Made In designs professional quality products for the home cook. They partner with multi-generational factories and artisans to offer a real comprehensive collection of pots, pans, serveware, baking dishes, and everything else you might need to cook and serve food in a home kitchen, and especially during the holidays. I think today we're gonna need the 8x8 baking dish. Maiden's porcelain bakeware set is made in France from a proprietary 200-year-old recipe, which gives it its true white and has been perfected over generations. Pure porcelain is the best material for baking because of its heating properties. It's better than ceramic, metal, stainless steel, and all other materials. Each piece is hand finished and decorated with various colors, which also happens to match all the other plates and serveware that I have, so I can look and feel like a real adult. So if you're looking for great bakeware, great cookware, great serveware, Maiden really does have everything you need. And with the holidays in full swing, it all makes really great gifts. And between you and me, that's exactly what I'm gonna be doing. So if you're looking to stock yourself or a loved one with some great gear, Maiden is offering 30% off for their holiday sale using the link in my description. Head on down, check it out, and let's jump back into the recipe. Now we use about a half cup to a cup of Parmigiano Reggiano, but I still have a little bit left that I reserved, maybe a quarter cup, and I'm gonna add it about a cup of breadcrumbs to it and that chopped parsley to it. Add a little bit of olive oil, mix it in, that's gonna be a nice breadcrumb mixture. Now let's bring over our turkey tetrazzini, and I can see that the sauce tightened up a little bit. I'm gonna thin it back out by adding a good amount of that pasta water. Again, we need that sauce to be thin enough to continue to cook the pasta in the oven for about 30 minutes and still have some left over when we serve it. So get the pasta into that baking dish, use a spatula to get every last drop, cover the top with the breadcrumb mixture, a little bit of olive oil up top, and then into a 400-degree oven for 25 minutes. After 25 minutes, I give it a check. It's not as bubbly and beautiful yet, so I'm gonna give it a rotate and continue to cook it for 10 more minutes, just until all the breadcrumbs are nice and brown, until the entire thing is nice and bubbly and gooey and hot. And then after 35 to 40 minutes total cook time, we can see it's nice and bubbly, the breadcrumbs are browned. We can pull it out of the oven and let it rest for a second, and then we can serve it. In a plate, you just spoon out some nice portions, and as you can see, it's still creamy because we made sure our sauce was the proper consistency. So you can go ahead and just spoon some in a bowl, and as you can see, it's nice and creamy and cooked through in the center. The top has got some nice crispy burnt pieces of pasta, which are always delicious. And I like to finish with a little bit of these crispy fried onions that you usually have on hand during Thanksgiving, and then you can dig in. I actually forgot Parmesan cheese. That is obviously a necessity, so I add a little bit. And then you have turkey tetrazzini, an old stale recipe that we just made a little bit fresher. There ain't nothing stale about that. Recipe's gonna be linked down in my plan of attack. It's a digital download. It's not a book. Hopefully next year we'll have a book ready to print. Happy Thanksgiving. That's all that I've got today. I'll see you next time. Until then, take care of yourself and go feed yourself. Now I've got a new way that I cook my turkey that you really gotta see, that I'm gonna leave linked up on the screen, along with a few other of my holiday recipes if you're interested. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching.